Welcome everyone to Placer Discover, our virtual series in partnership with JLL, and the second piece of the initial conference that we started running virtually in July. We're really excited to be doing this, and I'm going to turn things over to Lee Jackson from JLL to bring us up to speed on where we're going to be starting today.
Great, thanks, Ethan. Thanks for the partnership here. Just for background, for folks who are tuning in, we ran a first version of this session with a collection of best-in-class landlord and property management groups. We had Centennial REIT, Oxford Properties, and Macerich join us. And we asked them a very simple question about property technology and utilization within their portfolios. And that question was, what are you using today that is really making a difference in your ecosystems? And today we're bringing the vendors who were called out. We have Randall McKillop with Malcom, Sam Ubachami with AdeptMind, and Arjun Rao with Yardi, who is powering the quick space tool with Macerich. And the intent here is to dive a little bit deeper on those solutions and share those with the listeners. So that's where we're at today, Ethan.
Yeah, I think it's important because this is kind of this ever-flowing conversation. You kind of realize the more you have them, how many different perspectives comes to play and how critical all those perspectives are into driving this evolution and this progress forward. Because again, between the vendors, the owner operators, the kind of the retailers involved, there's just so much happening all at once. I think making sense within that complexity is super important. But I mean, maybe let's start with the most basic. And and Randall, let's kick off with you. I mean, give us that kind of 60-second story. Who is Malcom? What are you folks doing?
Sure. Well, pleasure to be here today. Thank you so much for inviting us. And so I'm Randall McKillop. I'm the head of sales for Malcom. We're actually a European-based company, launched in US and Canada in 2019. Oxford was one of the first customers that adopted us in the US and Canada. And so we're sort of the leading tenant experience and community building portal for retail properties. And so what that means is we facilitate communications between the landlord and tenants, but also anything that can be aggregated into sort of a single environment to make the day in the life of the retailers easier. So we integrate lots of other vendors and create sort of this unified ecosystem for anything that a tenant has to do in sort of their daily life. That includes working with the likes of AdeptMind and of course Yardi, so prevalent in the industry, things like that. So that can be anything from how do I what hours am I supposed to be open to in the middle of COVID, when am I shutting my door, to reporting their monthly sales, things like that, or reporting a leak in their back room. So very operational, but all centralized into one environment, making it very clear for both landlord and tenant to know everything that's being said between each other.
Absolutely, that was great. Sam, maybe you can do the same for AdeptMind.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. I am the director of sales for AdeptMind. AdeptMind's based out of Toronto. We've developed and created a omni-channel product for shopping centers that allows users to discover and browse products available within the center online through the center's website. Alongside, we've also developed a digital marketplace that allows users to check out and purchase multiple items from different retailers in one cart. We were the first to successfully launch this product 2 years ago with Centennial, and since then we've partnered with many malls and mall owners across US, Canada, and Europe, with the likes of Oxford, Hammerson, Centennial, Bayer Properties, which is now Centennial, Mall of America, Cushway, just to name a few. And it's been quite a journey, and to see the industry move in this direction has been very exciting.
Amazing. And Arjun, last but not least.
Yeah, great to be with you all. Thanks, Ethan and Randall. Sam, nice to be with you. And I lead our commercial products here at Yardi. I've been here for 7 years, really enjoyed it, and plan to be here for many, many more. And Yardi itself has been around for a long time. We started 40 years ago. Same founder, CEO, still family owned, and no plans to change that. We have 8,000 employees globally, and across our spectrum, we operate in commercial, multifamily, et cetera. And we have 150 products covering everything from marketing and leasing, budgeting and forecasting, construction, facility, et cetera. And that's kind of our wheelhouse. But I personally am focused on retail and industrial as our client base, and do a lot on those fronts, and excited to talk about some of the things that we're experiencing.
So, I mean, and maybe Arjun, we'll start with you here, just because kind of the kind of the longevity that Yardi has. I mean, we do feel like, at least within the PropTech space, we are at this, turning point, tipping point of kind of rapid adoption of technology. And I would love to know from your perspective why you think that is. What is coming together right now to make that happen?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a great question, Ethan. I think one of the big things is there's a lot of capital invested in technology, right? I think the growth in capital that's available for startups has increased massively in the last 10 or 15 years. I think that's one big input into it. I think a lot of our clients, real estate owners, are trying to get into the investment space as well, where they're excited to invest in real estate technology companies. And I also think it's easier to build technology. Before you'd have to build everything from the ground up, right? Now there's so many libraries. You have AWS, you have Azure, you have all these different sort of back-end technologies that allow you to basically spin up a product pretty quickly. And so there's a lot of people with great ideas, there's a lot of clients with great ideas, and they can instantiate those pretty quickly these days. And it's leading to a lot of innovation.
Sam, go to you with the same question, but I'll add this piece of kind of, what do you see the role from the vendor perspective of kind of driving or hastening the adoption curves?
Yeah, the vendor's role, I think, is to be creative and show the possibilities of the technology or the solutions and the value propositions that make them unique. It's also equally important for vendors to be able to willing and collaborate with each other in order to move these technologies forward. And I think what we've seen change over the last couple of years is that data is king. Right, so the more data that we can create and the more data that we can give to our partners has become insurmountable, and they use that data for so many other things. So any way we're able to help them facilitate that growth and to help them with their initiatives is exactly what we're here for.
Amazing.
I'll actually add to that, Ethan, if that's okay. I agree, sure. And I think the fact that the three of us are on this call is indicative of that mindset of, I feel like with real estate, I mean, it's probably generally good and applicable with all enterprise technology, but especially with real estate, clients want to be partnered with. They want to, have input into how the product is going to perform for them. And one thing I like about technology or real estate companies as it relates to technology is they're very practical. And I'll probably bring that up a couple of times over this call. They want pragmatic solutions. And the only way to really get to those is we can all invent stuff in our heads, but until they're actually going to use it, they're going to tell us, like, I actually don't need this thing at all that you thought was really cool. I need this other thing that is maybe super tactical, but actually very beneficial to how I operate. And I'm sure with our clients, the three of us, we experience that. And it's what makes our technologies applicable to them. And I think it's what leads to longevity in the space, is that the clients feel like they're heard and that you're responding to them. And that's what ideally leads to our products getting adopted.
Randall, your thoughts?
Absolutely echo both of those opinions. So what's interesting is I actually came from the owner operator side originally. So I was at Westfield for many years running their consumer facing technology, then now on the vendor side. And there was kind of a couple of pivotal things that changed the industry that I think has greatly accelerated both the adoption and sort of the willingness to adopt technology. And so that was both mobile technologies being ubiquitously available in a physical space. In the early days of building technology in particularly physical environments, it was very costly because you'd have to literally run wires everywhere. Then with COVID, that forced change into an industry that was traditionally hesitant in change. And you had those two items sort of collide at the exact same moment. And that has just blown open the entire industry for the willingness of change, because greater change was influenced or inflicted on the industry due to COVID. And so now you're starting to see standards come and certainly, I came from the e-commerce world originally, where it's very easy to have a connected environment if it's all on the internet. But now you can actually build a connected environment in the physical environment very easily much cheaper. And you see a lot of the vendors actually purposely building their platforms to basically integrate with other technologies. You get all of those, it's a perfect storm, and the industry is reaping the benefits from that.
I mean, it's such an important point. It's almost like in some cases, the e-commerce industry was a sandbox for what could be done in physical, and now you're seeing that come to physical. But I also feel like a big piece of it is, you mentioned that you came from Westfield, but Lee, what you are doing at JLL, like part of this bridging kind of the gaps just between a real estate segment that at least in very interesting way perceives itself as somewhat outdated, even though I don't know that it's any worse than anywhere else, but like there this kind of jumping forward and that need to bridge that gap.
I think there's two key customers in everyone's scenario here. There's the visitors to the center, and the customer has changed, right? People expect a digital first experience, which has not traditionally been provided. And there's the customer, the occupier, and that experience and the acceleration of how to access information has changed because of groups like Placer and many other technologies. From an analysis perspective, they want that information at their fingertips. And it falls on, I guess, the third customer. There's even a third customer, which is the vendor's customer, which is the landlords, who haven't traditionally provided this ecosystem or this convenience to the occupier or to the customer, to be perfectly frank. So there's two customers that they're looking to service now, utilizing tech, and it all boils back to convenience at the end of the day. And yeah, that's what we're looking to highlight. And for these three groups, their clients have called them out as something that they see fulfilling that objective. I'm really excited to dig deeper.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the interesting things here is we kind of alluded to this. I know when we entered the space, there was this wide perception that, look, Sam said this, data is king. So we're like, we're a data company. Everyone's going to love this. And how many folks were like, data, we're so old school. We're not going to use, data. And so it was kind of this interesting education gap that we needed to overcome. And I wonder, from your perspectives, what was the biggest challenge you found in bringing that innovation, bringing that progress to the commercial real estate industry specifically? Randall, I don't know if you want to kick us off.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, because we sit right between the landlord and the tenant, actually like consulting first and showing how it can actually benefit everybody. It's interesting because you would think it'd be intuitive to say, oh yeah, sure, if you digitize it, it's going to be better. But everybody's business is different, and actually first showing how that experience can actually work. Now that we actually have really good adoption all across the globe, it's easier because we have other clients that we can reference to. But certainly in the early days, there was a large amount of partnership and trust that had to happen for a company to change the way that they actually did business, which landlords' main business is their tenants, right?
Yeah, it's go ahead, Arjun.
Well, I was gonna say, Ethan, also to your point about the why has it adopted sort of more slowly on the commercial real estate side. On the multifamily side, it's interesting because we kind of have this dichotomy where commercial real estate, in terms of our products, our marketing products are probably 5 years behind our multifamily products. And it's nothing to do with us. It's simply clients didn't want them on the commercial side. And so on the multifamily side, we've had full lead to lease functionality. We've had incredibly sophisticated SEO, SEM stuff, a lot of analysis of where your dollar is going and how that's going to respond in terms of an actual signed lease and the return on the investment of that dollar for marketing. And we show these to commercial clients, and they're like, I just put it on CoStar and I'm good. I don't need much more than that. And I think, to Randall's point, with COVID, like, a lot of things change. And of course, your brokerages are still key. Your traditional sort of marketplaces are still key, but you also have many other channels that you can augment those with and make sure that you're actually getting the bang for the buck that you want. And I do think that there has been a shift over the last couple of years towards that direction. But again, still balanced with, like, hey, I've done great for 40 years in this company that I've owned real estate in. And I didn't have technology for much of it. So I'll take some, but I may not take everything. And to us, that's also fine. You know, I think that we respect that opinion.
Yeah, I think that pace is a really interesting one. Sam, from your perspective, and especially something that is, I mean, a very e-commerce concept that you're bringing into the physical world. I mean, how was that adoption curve? What do you how do you handle that?
Yeah, I mean, it feels like forever ago. So in 2019, when we were first looking at introducing this product, adoption didn't seem like it was going to happen quick. There was a lot of detractors. A lot of people in this space have tried this before. They didn't think it was really possible. But unfortunately, the silver lining was the pandemic, and out of necessity, having the malls become omni-channel and have a digital front became super important. And I think what really helped us there was we really had some key collaborators with us who were willing to take the jump, become innovative, and help us mold and shape this product into what it became. And since then, I think the product in itself has shifted to become more to what the industry needs based on those collaborations. But at first, it was a difficult requirement to find somebody who was willing to take that first jump. Once we did, it was all smooth sailing from there, and the product is still shifting to fit what the industry needs and requires.
I mean, you touched on something so important there with, I think this is an industry that's uniquely involved in the way you develop products. And so,
Yeah.
and they'll tell you, hey, you have it done this way. That's wrong. Do it like this.
We
I
want it
think
like
that-
this, yeah.
Yeah, but that is a very valuable element of like, and I think it enables a different type of partnership. I know it's one that we've certainly kind of gained a lot from. I also feel like there is this element of calling out this kind of commercial real estate, we're so backwards, as nonsense, because I don't think it's true. Like, I think it's a really sophisticated industry. And I think part of the challenge is, how do you fit these technologies within a perspective where they're like, okay, Arjun, to your point earlier, I can use this tomorrow. And I think, we're always balancing this thing as technology companies, of we have this long-term vision of how we're going to fundamentally reimagine something. But then there are many, many steps in that journey that we want to take to get there, including focusing on short-term adoption. And I mean, Sam, maybe let's start with you on this one. How do you all right, what's like the step one? Hey, I'm going to make your entire mall essentially an e-commerce site, but I have to do it step one. How do you find that balance?
I think for these shifts to happen, there needs to be an understanding of what's needed now and what the vendor can do to relieve any pain points or adjust our technology to match the industry requirements. And that goes back again to collaboration. It's really important for CREs, I think, to be open to the changes and willing to adapt and accommodate and accept these new technologies. So from our perspective, we think that these short-term gains will lead to long-term shifts. In the end, it's all baby steps, especially considering the technology is quite new and quite innovative. And again, it's shifting with the industry as needed year over year.
Arjun, your thoughts on that same issue? How do you balance that long-term, short-term?
Yeah. Well, first I'll comment. When I heard about Sam's product, I thought that is really cool. Like, I'd love to be able to go to a mall and know, do they have the thing I'm actually trying to go there for? And so I can test it out. That's actually I had not heard of that before, and I thought it was really cool and makes a lot of sense.
Thank you.
For us, it's all about the first 3 clients. Can we find kind of the initial, I'll call them alpha clients, of like, we have maybe 40% of a product, 50%, 60%, maybe. These 3 will help us get it to 80 to 90%, and it takes the next 15 or 20 to get it to 100% or whatever. But you have to have those partners, to your point, Ethan, about like, they're going to make this product practical for them and work for them where they'll actually use it. And once we can start working with those types of clients, then I feel like the long-term solution becomes a lot easier, because most of the clients who are open to this, they know it might be a 1 year, 2 year process, right? It's not going to be super quick. They might get something quickly, or they may not get something quickly. And they say like, I'll keep giving you feedback, but I'm not going to roll this out to my team until this is like ready to go, because you only have one bite at the apple with some of these people, and we're just going to do it when it's really good. But you have this core set of a few people giving you feedback, and you're developing almost to their specs. But if there's a few of them, okay, this is not just custom for them, like we're abstracting to a broader group of clients that this could work for. And I think that long-term solution then starts to play out more if you get that initial balance view.
That's interesting. Randall, would you have a similar experience?
Yeah, absolutely. That short-term, solving a pain point right out of the gate, to long-term vision. Since our platform is so highly configurable and customizable to each property, there tends to be at the first conversations just pie in the sky. I want to build, sort of this unbelievably elaborate, maze, and it's always a walking back process to say, start really small. The system is built to be modular, and just get your tenants to change their habits first, right? Move away from email, start communicating through a centralized system, and then start layering on, and get to integrating parking and door access and e-commerce platforms. That's a highly evolved program at that point, and so we've seen. We're in over 900 properties at this point, and so we've seen that process happen over and over again to be successful. Where if a company tries to do everything out of the gate, it tends to be a little challenging.
Yeah, it is this weird element where you almost need to tone down the excitement, even in the sales process, to say like, yeah, it's gonna one day be there. But let's just focus on day one, month one, year one, where we make sure you get value, you get excited. Everyone's kind of repeated it. That you do in many cases only get that one chance to really impress and to make that positive first impression. I mean, Lee, you sit kind of at this really interesting kind of nexus of, what's if you had the advice to give to both sides on how to maximize. All right, you're about to adopt a new technology, whether you're the landlord, you're about to bring your technology to a landlord. Like, what's the key to making that relationship kind of hit that first steps effectively?
Yeah, it's a great point, Ethan. I think just quickly on the challenge side, one of the big challenges is who owns which customer. And I know I spoke about the customer previously, but for landlords and retailers, is the visitor to the center the retailer's customer or the landlord's? And that tends to be a debate that comes up in every single discussion that we have. Should the retailer be focusing on acquiring that customer and putting them into their CRM system, or should I as the landlord? And are we competing for that customer? And that is something I know that comes up in all of your worlds, whether that's onboarding tenants into a communications platform, or any other of the modules that exist within the Yardi ecosystem. That retailer then has one of 1,000 locations at your client's center. So how does that become a priority for that individual as well? But if I were to go back to your question, I think focusing on the objectives of the groups, everybody has unique objectives. Every landlord has a different property management philosophy or style or cadence in the space. Some landlords are merchant. They want to actually transact their product fairly quickly. So introducing technologies can actually be disruptive to that process. It can slow things down, or it can become clunky or chunky when you're transacting or transitioning to another objective-led landlord or operator who's going to acquire that property. So focusing in on what type of property manager you're dealing with, that would be my advice, is what are their objectives?
Yeah, that's super important. I'm kind of very fascinated by what you brought up of kind of the whose customer is it? I mean, this is something we grapple with quite often of, I think there's this missing, obviously not in all cases and not across the board, but retailers are brands, we know that. And shopping centers are usually very often see themselves as made up of their brand. So if I have a Publix in my center, Publix is still the most important brand. But I think one of the things that at least we've been kind of really fascinated by is like, well, the shopping center is a brand too. And because the retailers leave and the shopping center still has weight, and it very often gives weight. I mean, Randall, coming from Westfield, you know this better than almost anyone. A high-end mall, if I'm a retailer and I set up in that mall, I get kind of this waterfall value that comes from just being there. And I wonder kind of, we all sit at kind of this interesting place where you're kind of in between both. And maybe Randall, will start with you on this one. How do you view that relationship? How do you walk that balance, especially as kind of a technology that's attempting to maximize that relationship?
Yeah, well, so it's an ever expanding demographic at this point, right? Where you do have retail brands that are part of shopping centers, but then certainly over the last even more than probably 10 years, you've seen the shift to experience and services, micro gyms, things like that. And so the districting and the making it a place, placemaking is really what's come into play. And certainly from a real estate point of view, you instantly start to pull in all the adjacent buildings, which we generally call mixed use, right? So retail is the core. You've got some office, you've got some multifamily residential, you've got hospitality. And so that's where we've really seen, sort of the next growth of our platform is creating digital streams to basically all those different environments, all through a seamless experience where the landlord can see it holistically, control the streams. So it's still in the paradigm of a shopping center, but it can reach out to other technology platforms, other buildings, other types of customers. And that's that bridge between physical and e-commerce, right? It still has a tether in the community.
Sam, speaking of that bridge between physical and e-commerce, how do you view that gap and kind of addressing it?
Yeah, the great segue, by the way. I think what our initial goals were when we were first pitching out the product was to give visibility to inline stores. We wanted people to see what was available in the center, outside of your anchors. Everybody knows the anchors, but what else is available within the center? And I think this was the first time where we really explored the possibilities of what our product could bring, to support the smaller mom and pop shops, to support those retailers that are within the shopping center, and to give them support. Because if you as a mall owner are giving support to these tenants and allowing them to be on a physical and now a digital front, you're doing what you can in order to bring sales, to bring visibility, and to bring awareness to those brands and products that are available within the shopping centers. These were very important key points that we still stress. And I think as the product grows, it now expands to things like services within the shopping center. How do you support the barbershop? How do you support the nail salon? How do you support those traffic bringers to the shopping center, especially food? What we learned at ICSC is that people's expenses on food have gone up. So if people are able to order food or are able to search for where you can eat a steak at your shopping center, this will also drive traffic back to the mall, and also back to the platform. Once they know that they can book their appointments, they can pre-browse, and they can order food, this becomes a really holistic and complete product. So as the product continues to grow, I think we're looking at different ways where we can incorporate and service these additional tenants within the shopping center.
Arjun, for you, I think we talked a little bit about some of the challenges of kind of operating in CRE or as a technology company entering into CRE, some of the challenges. When you think about, for you, the most exciting thing about operating in this space, what would it be?
I think the evolution that Randall and Sam have talked about is really exciting, and it kind of reminds me of, maybe 40 years ago, if you wanted to buy a stock, you'd call your stockbook, keeper, and they'd buy the stock for you. And, it became far more democratized when we could all just go on E-Trade or Ameritrade or whatever and buy a stock. That's obviously not going to happen for most leases, but co-working, pop-up shops, specialty leasing like we're working with on Macerich, those are becoming more of, more flexible terms, smaller spaces, like just more innovation around what customers are going to see when they come into the shopping center. And I think it's really exciting to figure out how to enable that, not just technically, but also physically, and sort of how do you actually in the real world enable that. And as a consumer, as all of us, it's exciting to go to a place and not necessarily know exactly that store wasn't there before. And it's not just the Halloween and Christmas stores; it's like other random things that come up that are interesting. And I feel like that's a great place for us all to be at.
Randall, same for you. Like, what makes this a particularly exciting space to be operating in right now?
So as somebody who kind of grew up in the e-commerce for the better part of 20 years, where operating technology in the internet, it very quickly you learn you don't want to build it yourself. You want to rely on industry giants and standards and things like that to build your technology. And I feel like I saw Rev 1 of technology, I know there's been many different periods of technology for real estate, but for a good period there, a lot of real estate owners would try to build these solutions themselves, right? Which Some great platforms were built. But the thing is it's very expensive and very hard to evolve those. And I feel right now is this golden moment where the real estate industry is starting to see those benefits of vendors basically investing in solutions that are specifically tailor-made for their industry, and really put in best practices and things like that. And so it's just a really, really great time for being able to deploy those technologies into these properties, partly because of the adoption, and then partly just those lessons have all been learned. It's one of those things where e-commerce paid the price first, and now physical real estate is actually getting to reap the benefits of those lessons learned.
Lee, your thoughts on this?
It all comes back to convenience for me, Ethan. I think all three of the vendors on this call solve for convenience, whether it's Malcom creating convenience between communications of tenants and occupiers and the site teams, the facilities management teams. Why should a GM ever have to go door to door at an asset, right? I mean, it can live within an ecosystem, and all of the memorandums that get recirculated over and over can live there too. And well, why can't we communicate in a direct perspective outside of email and keep employees inside of that ecosystem? For Sam, with the customer, people discover at home and they don't want to show up to the mall to find what they're looking for. They want to find what they're looking for and show up because they know it's going to be there now. That's a behavioral change that's happened with the customer. It's just convenient. And for future prospective tenants, pop-ups, flex space, you name it, those individuals to seek space today at 99% of shopping center and any type of asset, they have to go to a website, find a leasing contact, send an email. Then there's some back and forth, and then it goes into its own cycle and flow where you can really just condense that, and it's way more pleasurable of an experience for the seeker, the space seeker, to just view everything in one simple ecosystem. All three of those shorten the gap and create a better end user experience in each process. So I would say, I just think it's about convenience. That's what excites me the most. The customer is demanding it, the occupier is demanding it, even the employee within each landlord's ecosystem is demanding it. They want to be able to do their job more effectively and with more efficiency.
Yeah, no, it's a really important point. I also feel like there's something particularly exciting about this exact moment in time, because just a few years ago, we were in this retail apocalypse narrative. The world is overmauled, stores are stupid, they're all going to die. And anyone who's operating in that kind of innovation in the physical retail space, we get to kind of be part of this vanguard that's like, no, they're not. They're evolving, and they're evolving in a really cool and exciting way. And we get to be part of that kind of journey, and even in a small part to kind of empower that. And I think this empowered commercial real estate space that's starting to be a lot more confident, starting to have a much stronger vision of its future, is embracing these technologies, not out of like fear of like what's going to happen, but out of confidence in where their future is going. And I think that makes this so amazing, because it's a period that's ripe for like not cost saving innovation, not just about how do I make things a little bit easier, but how do I actually change the way things are done. And with that, we'll go kind of across the board here for this one. Apart from kind of your specific solution, what is the biggest technology game changer you see coming to the commercial real estate space? Arjun, let's start with you.
Oh man, Ethan, I was hoping you were going to start with somebody else.
I'm starting with you because you were paid under the table to say it was Placer. So let's just.
I mean, on the retail side, I do think data is so critical. Foot traffic. So this is an area that Yardi doesn't play in, and have a lot of respect for people who bring that kind of data. I think in a lot of commercial real estate, data is important, but sometimes overplayed, because in office and industrial, every single lease is very different from every other lease. They really are. And there's a lot of specificity to it. Some of retail has that as well, but it also benefits from being a little bit more like a traditional multifamily, where you can get a little bit more of the benefit of economies of scale. And I think data is important. And so being able to have a retailer say, all right, this mall has this type of traffic, that's my own type of customer demographic that I can sell to, and I can actually plan out potential economics before I come in based on this, not just the city or not just a zip code, but this actual place. I think that is pretty remarkable and makes that process much better for anybody who's trying to start a retailing business.
Arjun, you earn your bribe money so well. And then
You're welcome.
Sam, your thoughts.
Yeah, I think some of the greatest players are here today, and there's definitely a lot more out there to highlight. I think where technology plays a key role in for CRE is the fact that it's no longer just one vendor doing one thing. Now with today's technology, vendors can communicate and work with each other to provide that holistic experience, to give that full overview of how the property is doing, from sales being driven from foot traffic, from spaces being taken up, from pop-ups being physical and digital. There's so many more aspects now where technologies can now work together rather than it just being one vendor doing one thing. And I think this has become such a crucial piece that when mall owners and developers or anybody in the space is looking to bring in a vendor, they want to make sure that they're willing to play ball, and they're willing to make sure that they can work with each other to give that full image.
Randall.
So I'm not sure it's the biggest game changer, but the area that I'm seeing the most activity right now is actually logistics between the property and the consumer, right? So shopping centers and real estate have always been really good at the in-person logistics, right? They branched out to sort of the curb, so like, a couple inches out of the property. But now I'm seeing just an explosion in that where no matter how a shopper wants to basically consume the service or have the delivery, there is either a new startup or a new PropTech company or a new service out there that can facilitate that, and starting to aggregate that together so it's both a good consumer experience, right? So that's the key. I think that's the convenience piece that Lee's talking about, is it's got to be a great consumer experience, right? And the technology can finally support that, or technologies of the world. And so I think that's the next thing that we're going to see is anywhere you want it, any way you want it delivered to your plane, your home, your office, your car, right? And that's all going to be a connected experience, just like AdeptMind is from e-commerce shopping, just from the in-person shopping experiences, right? Of course, underneath that is data. Data's got to run all of that, right? And so give you props for that.
Lee, your thoughts on it?
The thing that I think is going to be the biggest game changer is loyalty and attribution. I think whether it's a landlord or a retailer who's owning that, I think they both should, to be perfectly honest. Being able to know who your 20% are that drive 80% of the revenue in your asset to your retailers is going to be more important than ever before. Targeting and retargeting those individuals and rewarding that behavior. If you asked, most shopping center owners today, if they're connected to that customer, the answer is no. And I say that pretty confidently, and that's a big hole. And there's a lot of groups that are focused on regaining that. Caruso just launched their rewards program, and I'm excited to see how that plays out and how the adoption is on that. Simon just launched a credit card focused loyalty program, and there are some loyalty pilots taking place across North America. Someone's going to get it right. Everyone who's trying to do it is doing the right thing, in my opinion. And the leasing deck of the future for traditional retail focused groups is going to include that attribution. We are connected to X, and that is a game changer. We can talk about football all day long. We've been doing it for 40 years. And there's another connection point to the customer. That to me is the biggest game changer out there that people are working on.
I think sadly you took what I was going to say, so I'll give you a spin on it too. But I think it's part of what we're doing with the employees in the stores. I think as the world becomes more connected, and as we see kind of issues with labor shortages, people choosing, kind of the great, not going to work, the people leaving, the great resignation, whatever you want to call it. If we can start giving, that in-store salesperson, sales associate credit for the fact that they convinced me to buy one shirt in the store, but then I went and I bought 6 more over the course of the year. And there is this kind of longevity, and they're part of the process, and they're really benefiting from this kind of wider omni perspective. I think that's going to kind of up this win-win factor. That's going to bring us the right employees, keep the experience getting better and better in store and beyond. It's a huge piece, and kind of elements like lowering the amount of time they have to spend on tedious work and can improve their communication with their landlord, etc. That's such a huge piece of the puzzle. I mean, this was a really exciting conversation. I know for me, it's always kind of really fascinating to hear all these different perspectives on what's kind of blocking innovation, what's bringing innovation, where things are coming. I think some really interesting common themes have come out, which is one, the need for partnership here. So if you are one of those kind of groups that's kind of working with a new technology company, considering a new technology company, really dive into that relationship, because across the board, they are looking to have a real partnership to figure out what their roadmap should look like based on what you want and need. And then having that map, that roadmap to success that isn't overly ambitious to start. You're learning how to do things. And the more you build in a smart way, the more success you're going to have in the long term. And I think the final bit is, and this is one of those great opportunities to dive in. And I'd say because of the partnership, this is one of those chances where, as a landlord, you can define what the future looks like, because not just because of your own decisions and your own impact, but because of your relationship with your vendors, because of the partnership you're creating with those technology companies, you're helping to create what that future looks like. And you have a chance to mold that in a way that won't necessarily exist as more vendors are more fully baked and we're larger ships. We're a little bit hard to pivot. It's just kind of the nature of the game. And I think there's something really exciting happening. I just want to thank all of our panelists, Randall, Sam, and Arjun from Malcolm, AdeptMind, and Yardi, respectively, to Lee Jackson from JLL, who's been such a wonderful partner throughout this. We're hoping to do more of these in the future, continue to have these conversations around innovation within the PropTech space. Lee, any final thoughts?
No, echo that. This was a great discussion, guys. Thanks for making the time for us and diving a bit deeper into your projects.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Great. Thanks for having.
Thanks everyone for being here, and keep an eye out. We'll have the next one coming for you again soon. Thanks so much for joining.